Good evening. Boa noite para todo mundo. We're going to speak in English, you know already. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. Really pleasure. And to be with David also. David, thank you so much. We are going to talk about the digital revolution, banking revolution here in Brazil. And David is the best person to talk about this. So, David, let's begin. Nubank was the pioneer among digital financial institutions in Brazil. What motivated a Colombian to open a digital bank in Brazil 10 years ago?
Thanks, Chris, and thanks everyone for being here. It's a pleasure. If somebody had told me 10 years ago, and we're turning 10 next month, so we're our first decade, they're going to be able to be here in front in a scenario talking about our history, I would have not believed it. And it really began as a lot of startup stories began. I have moved to Sao Paulo. I went across the corner to open a bank account, and I entered a world of pain. It took me 2 hours to navigate a banking branch. I was trapped in a bulletproof door. I had to leave my notebook and my smartphone in a locker. I had to go and wait for 45 minutes to talk to somebody to help me open a bank account. I had to go back to the branch several times. And after about 5 months trying to open a bank account, this just did not make any sense. I started asking, how is it possible that banks are offering that service? And how is it possible that people are agreeing with that and there's no more alternatives? I started asking my friends, are there any opportunities? Is there any options? And there wasn't anything really. So I started asking around about the opportunity of building an online bank. Obviously, the digitalization and technology was just beginning at that point. This was 2012. And after talking to a lot of experts that told me, David, forget it. It's impossible to do that in Brazil. The big banks are going to crush you. There is no way that you can compete. The regulators won't let you. The government won't let you. The customers won't let you. I had to try. I had to try. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so in 2013, brought a couple of pirates, co-founders that joined me, and the rest is history.
So 10 years after, you have 80 million customers, 75 here in Brazil. Many of them were even banked before you open Nubank. I'd like to know, how do you achieve this feat?
So obviously there was a fair amount of work building the first product and then scaling the entire platform, but the reality, and sometimes I almost surprised myself, it was actually extremely simple. It was a simple insight that was very complex to execute. But the simple insight was that people wanted to be treated well. That customers wanted a fast answer, they wanted good products, they wanted to be prioritized. They did not want to spend 2 hours in a banking branch trying to talk to a branch manager. They did not want to be paying hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fees. They were ready for alternatives. They were ready to test new stuff. And so I think ultimately we went with that insight that we wanted to create a company and a culture that was obsessed about the consumer, that was obsessed about building a phenomenal product. And as we scaled, we tried to improve our products again and again and again. So we found that banked customers were ready to embrace new offers. And then we found that unbanked customers obviously wanted to be banked. People did not want to have their money under their mattress. People did not necessarily they want to be formalized. They want a credit card. They want their first debit card. So ultimately, that was our bet, that people were going to be wanting to be treated well and that we were going to be able to offer a great product and scale together with them.
And what are in general the special or the most important changes you see during these 10 years after you open Nubank in the banks here in Brazil and in the relationship between the customer and the banks?
Yeah, so it's been very interesting to see how the entire competitive landscape has evolved. And I always like to quote a quote that apparently is by Gandhi. Nobody really knows if in the internet it's by Gandhi, but he apparently said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then fight you, and then you win. And through the 10 years, we've seen those stages. We were initially completely ignored. We were a little startup with a couple of people trying to launch a purple credit card, and then we got a license, and then we launched a new conta. But we were completely ignored for a very long time. And then we went into they laugh at you. And we were ridiculed. How is it possible? They're never going to make any money. They're never going to scale. They're never going to get a license. They're never going to get past 100,000 customers, past 1 million customers, past 10 million customers. And then they went into the fighting mode. And definitely that has been probably the last couple of years where banks are competing very, very effectively. And some of them have done a phenomenal job. They are improving their culture. They're improving their products. They are focusing on the consumer, which is great for everybody. It's very, very healthy competition where ultimately everybody wins. So consumers get more alternatives, and it forces more people, more institutions to be better. When we started in Brazil, more or less 5 banks owned 85% of the financial services system in Brazil. Today, those 5 banks own 70%. So the concentration has gone from 85 to 70 in 10 years. I would say that's very healthy for the government, that's very healthy for Brazilians. Having more alternatives, more competition is a really good thing. And so I think the biggest changes have been around culture, technology, and ultimately them realizing or reinventing themselves as technology companies that have to fight very, very hard for the consumer.
Nubank started in a small house in Brooklyn, not Brooklyn, New York, Brooklyn, São Paulo. I'd like to know if you miss there, and also which are the major milestones in the bank's history, in your opinion?
Yeah, so we did not have a lot of money. We rented a small house in Brooklyn. We liked the area where we started because it was Rua, California. So we could say that we started our startup in California. It was an inside joke. And my co-founder, Edward, came from the US, and he was living on the 2nd floor while the entire company was in the 1st floor. And we worked a lot. We did not stop. We worked from early to night. We said that the house was a great interview filter because some people would come in to interview themselves with this online bank, and they would see this house and they would say, what a waste of time. There's no way these guys are going to have any shot. And they would just leave. But then a few ones would go in and ring the bell, and they would see the house, and they would come in, and we would explain them what we were trying to do. And they would say, I love it. I'll be here on Monday. And so we love the fact that it was a great interview filter because it attracted the right type of people, the people that were a bit crazy, that perhaps did not know how to measure risk, and that team of people built the first DNA of the company, which we think is very, very important to build it in the early days so it can scale with the rest of the company. And since then, we launched the first product, and what we found was a lot of product market fit and consumers coming and growing. And then really has been a lot of milestones. I think the day we got our banking license, that was a really happy day. We had to fight for almost 5 years to get a license. Brazil, it's in the constitution of Brazil that foreigners cannot invest in banks. So we had to get a presidential exception to ultimately get an exception so we could get a banking license. So that was a big milestone. We had to be raising a lot of rounds of capital in 2015, in 2017, when Brazil was going through a big GDP compression, when there was impeachment, when there was really bad PR. And explaining that to international investors was always really scary, to tell them that we were in Brazil trying to build a bank when all of these news were around. When we launched Mexico as our first country outside Brazil, that was a really happy milestone. Then Colombia, learning how to internationalize. And then I would say the IPO 2 years ago in New York was a really exciting milestone. We had a lot of the early employees, a lot of our early customers, and that was a really, really fun milestone. But again, we think that's just one point in time in hopefully a very long story of company that we're building. So we like to look more to the future rather than to the past.
Are you proud of everything you did?
We are very proud, yeah. It's been the hardest thing I ever done in my life. I think if I had known how hard it was going to be, probably I wouldn't have done it. But yeah, it's a lot of pride. I mean, it's sweat, it's tears, it's sleeping in the office, it's the occasional crisis, but it's been very rewarding.
As we are in an event that talks about the future, innovation, so let's talk about future. How do you see Nubank from 10 years from now, 10 years in advance? And also, how do you see all the digital banking system here in Brazil in 10 years?
Yeah, so banking or finance is fundamentally a digital good. We don't even need to send shoes or send bits or bytes to people's houses. It's fully digital. So the future of banking is certainly completely digital. There is really no point in having banking branches in every corner. We're in the first stage of that development. That's kind of the first realization. The second one is that, especially with consumer platforms and now with the beginning of a new era on artificial intelligence, fewer and fewer brands will be the gateway to the internet. You'll effectively divide companies in two stages. The gateways into the internet and companies that own proprietary data sets. There'll be very few brands that will be the entry path to the internet that, for example, in the future, you will not go to a website of an online travel agency. You will probably go through few gateways to get to get your ticket, to get your banking, to buy a pair of shoes. And so our bet, what we're trying to work for, is we want to be one of those gateways that use the large customer base that we have, that use the brand and the data that we built to help our customers solve their financial services issues, but increasingly solve other problems that they might have. So we think it's going to be a more concentrated area where you'll see a few brands that have that consumer interaction, that have a lot of the data that would enable consumers to get access to a lot of products. And then there'll be other providers of financial services that will be more on the back end, providing savings, providing investments, or providing other type of products like mortgages or more sophisticated products.
We're going to see another big revolution, you think, with artificial intelligence?
Yeah, we think it will be the most transformational revolution we'll all see in our lives. It will be the fastest as well, because if you think about it, with the beginning of the internet, you needed people to put internet connection in everybody's houses. That took 5 years. That took 10 years. Then the next platform shift was mobile. You needed maybe 5 years to get everybody's a smartphone in their phones. Now everybody has a smartphone, so everybody has a gateway to enter the next platform shift, which is AI. And we are in the beginning, in the early stages of seeing the new platform coming in, which will be AI platform. So absolutely, our view is that this is going to be very transformational change and will happen way faster, I think, than anybody really anticipates.
You and your wife launched a philanthropic platform in October last year. I'd like you to tell us a little bit about this. How important is it?
Yeah, so we feel extremely lucky. We worked very hard, but we also were very lucky in that through a lot of work for 10 years, we were able to build a company that solved a huge problem for a very large percentage of the population, or still in the process of solving that. When you solve a big problem, society in a capitalist system rewards you with a lot of wealth. And as we started discussing what would be the best ways to use that wealth, we decided that the best way to use that wealth was to give it back to society and to try help society solve some of the biggest problems that it has. Technology has solved a lot of problems and will solve a lot of problems, but it's also creating a lot of problems, a big problem of inequality. And so the people that benefit from the creation of that wealth has a bit of a moral responsibility to give back to society whenever that inequality increases to the levels that we're seeing right now. So we took a step back. We did a big list of social problems that we feel excited about. We ended up being very passionate about the issue of access to opportunities. We believe in meritocracy, but we believe in meritocracy when everybody begins at the same start line. And in our society, not everybody begins at the same start line. Some people begin 10 kilometers behind. Some people begin 10 kilometers ahead. So what we're very focused on is how do we enable everybody to have the same opportunities. And the two themes that we think might enable that is what we call education. Education is the great equalizer. Education is what provides everybody the opportunity to start ahead, move ahead, and then, go ahead and build companies. Go ahead and create a great professional opportunity. And also what we call is leadership. We need strong leaders. We need leaders from all society actively thinking about problems and actively thinking about how to solve the big societal problems. So our entire philanthropy is focused on those two themes. We're still in the early days of trying to think about how to address them. And we also want to do it in a way, similarly as we did in Nubank, also of almost rethinking a lot of these issues to make it open source, to enable technology to scale a lot of the solutions of these problems, and hopefully make a little bit of dent in solving some of the big problems that society has today.
We have 2 minutes. Also, financial education.
Yeah, I think education as a whole, financial education, I see it more part of the Nubank role, and I think Nubank is increasingly starting to invest into financial education and really, frankly, simple products that address a lot of the lack of knowledge in the financial space.
Thank you so much, David. It was a pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you so much, everybody. Boa noite para todos vocês. Obrigada mesmo.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Obrigado.
Obrigada.
Até mais.